In this example, we're asked to determine what was oxidized, what was reduced, the reducing agent, and the oxidizing agent. In order to answer any of these questions, the first thing I have to do is assign oxidation states to every atom in the equation. So I'll start on the reactant side. I've got copper by itself. There's no charge in the upper right-hand corner, so I know that's neutral copper. So it has an oxidation state of 0. It's H+, so hydrogen has a +1 oxidation state. For the nitrate, I have to do a little bit more work. The oxidation states on nitrogen and oxygen have to add up to be -1. So oxygen has higher priority, so I know it gets to be the -2 that it would normally like to be, but nitrogen has to assume whatever oxidation state it needs to in order for the whole ion to be -1. So I need to figure out what nitrogen is. So I'll do that with my little formula. So nitrogen is what I'm trying to find out. And there are 3 oxygens. Each one is -2. And the oxidation states have to add up to be -1. So 3 times -2 is -6. And that has to add up to be -1. So now I'll add 6 to both sides. -1 plus 6 is equal to +5. So the oxidation state on nitrogen is +5. And oxygen is -2. It's copper 2+, so oxidation state is the same as the charge in that case. For NO, again, I need to figure these out. This one's a little bit easier, so I don't think I need to use a formula. Oxygen being higher priority gets to be the -2 that it wants. For the whole thing to be neutral, because there's no charge in the upper right-hand corner, nitrogen has to be +2. And then finally, for water, hydrogen takes priority, so it gets to be its +1. But because there's 2 hydrogens and the whole thing needs to be neutral, oxygen also gets to be what it wants, which is -2. So there are a lot of mnemonic devices for remembering what oxidation and reduction are. My students seem to like the oil rig example the best. So oil rig. Oxidation is loss of electrons. Reduction is gain of electrons. Right? And we know electrons have a negative charge. So if the thing that is oxidized loses electrons, that means it's losing a negative charges, so it must be obtaining a positive charge. So in the case of oxidation, that element becomes more positive. And if reduction is the gain of electrons, if it's gaining negative things, then the element that is reduced is the one that became more negative. All right, so let's go back to our example. Okay, so I've put the oxidation states that we figured out on the previous slide in red underneath each one of the atoms. So oxidation is loss of electrons. So these things became more positive. So if I look, copper went from 0 to +2. So the copper became more positive. So the copper was oxidized. When I'm looking for the thing that was reduced, I'm looking for the thing that became more negative, or more negative is less positive. So nitrogen went from +5 to +2. So the nitrogen was reduced. Now, when I talk about what is oxidized and what is reduced, I need to answer to be individual atoms. So it's individual atoms that are oxidized and reduced. The copper was oxidized, the nitrogen was reduced. When I talk about the agents, I'm talking about the whole compounds in this case. So oxidation and reduction always come together. If something was oxidized, that means it lost electrons. Those electrons had to go somewhere, so they caused something else to be reduced when they gained those electrons. So when I talk about the reducing agent, I'm talking about the thing that caused nitrogen to be reduced. So it's the copper that caused the nitrogen to be reduced. So my answer for the reducing agent is the compound that contains the atom that was oxidized. In this case, copper is an atom, and so what was oxidized and the reducing agent in this case happen to be the same thing. But that's not the case when I go to the oxidizing agent, right? So the oxidizing agent is the thing that, the compound that caused copper to become oxidized. So it's the thing that contains the element that was reduced. In this case, the nitrate ion. So the answer for what is the oxidizing agent is the nitrate. So when you ask what is oxidized or what is reduced, the answer is individual atoms. When we ask what is the reducing agent and what is the oxidizing agent, we're talking about the whole compound or ion, in the case of this polyatomic ion. All right, and if you notice, right, the thing that was oxidized, or the thing is in the reducing agent. The thing that was reduced is in the oxidizing agent.